All right, so I will call the meeting to order. Tonight is Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. This is a special meeting of the school committee conducted entirely by Zoom. And because we are conducting the meeting by Zoom, any votes that are taken will be taken by roll call. I just want to start by checking in with the committee to make sure that everybody who is here can both hear the audio and also be able to speak back clearly so that it can be picked up by HCAM. So I'm going to start with you, Jamie.
Yes.
Kyla? I see
Sorry,
Kyla.
yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
Okay. And Susan?
Yes.
Okay. That's great. And then we also have Sheena, can you hear us okay?
I can, yes.
Fabulous. I just wanted to welcome you. I know not everybody has had the opportunity to meet you. Sheena is our new Director of Human Resources. And then Susan Rothermick and Susan, can you hear? Okay. And Carol?
Yes.
And Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. And then we are joined tonight by three of our consultants from NASDAQ. I'm going to ask Judy, can you hear okay?
I can, thank you.
Fabulous. And David?
Yes, perfectly
Right.
clear.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Christina?
Can hear you.
Fabulous. Thank you. And welcome everybody. I appreciate everybody coming out for a meeting by Zoom tonight. Just for folks who are at home, we are, as many have heard, in the beginning stages of our superintendent search for a new superintendent for after Dr. Kavanaugh retires. And at our meeting in December, we voted to bring NASDAQ on as a consultant. I've been very excited by the materials that we've received from you. And hopefully everybody on the school committee had an opportunity to read through the outline that I had sent earlier this week. So Judy, since I had spoken with you, do you want to start and talk a little bit about the outline that you had sent and about in our agenda? I have highlighted some of the decisions that we're hoping to get made tonight, but do you want to talk a little bit about the process from how you guys see? Thank you.
Okay, first I want to thank everyone for choosing NASDAQ. The New England School Development Council has been a leader in regards to superintendent searches throughout the region and also serves districts in a variety of ways. And we've been providing enrollment projections, for example, to Hopkinton for quite a while. I'm a former superintendent. I'm now serving as a NASDAQ consultant. With me here is David DeRossi. He is the executive director of NASDAQ. He'll be assisting with this search as well. And Christina McGonigal as well is here tonight. She will be a main point of contact when we'll have some logistical details to work through. So not only will I serve as your consultant, but you have the entire NASDAQ community really at your beck and call. And I hope you'll find that both in terms of organization, professionalism, and communication, we're really going to be at the top of consultants that serve in this role. And I'm excited to be here. I live in nearby Sutton, so I am very close by and can meet in person as well for a lot of the steps in this process. So I love how you set up the agenda. There are key decisions to be made. So I think it's real clear what decisions are to be made. But if you'd like, I could walk you through that packet that was sent. And then we can go to each decision in turn. Will that work out for you?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen, or would it just be okay to just go through the packet page by page?
So I think if you could share your screen, that would be fabulous. I don't have the, I'm not the host of the Zoom, so it would require somebody who is hosting it. Can we make that happen?
It is on, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Georgette.
Okay, so it's on. I don't see. Usually I have a button to press when I can share my screen. And I don't see that here, so,
At
okay.
the bottom with green with a little arrow on
Oh,
it.
here it is, here it is, very good. It looks a little different. I go back and forth with Google and Zoom all the time. Okay, so let me share my screen and move to the correct page. It'll just take me a minute. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so you should see, let me just move this out of the way. You should see the front page of the packet. Here we go. And so tonight we'll provide an overview of the search process. Talk a little bit about communication, and one of your decision points will be to name liaisons for the search. We'll go over the timeline, and another decision point will be to approve that timeline. Sometimes timelines need to be adjusted just a bit, but I think overall approval of the timeline is necessary so we could get started. We'll talk about focus groups, and that's another key decision point. It's which focus groups we'll be putting together in order to hear from the school community and the community at large about what they want to see in your next superintendent. We'll talk about the survey that NESDEC does along with that. In your packet, you'll see some informational letters that'll go out to the community when we're organizing these focus groups. And also you'll find letters that go out to the community when we are searching for key people to serve in the screening committee. We'll talk a little bit about advertisements, and that is all done by NESDEC. And we'll go through the screening procedure. That's the first step in the whole decision process. And then talk about that screening committee. That's another key decision point. And then talk just about other matters in general. So before we get to the timeline, Nancy, do you want to start with the first decision point, which is the liaisons that'll serve on the committee, or would you like me to talk about the roles of the school committee versus NESDEC so that people understand who these, what the liaison will be doing?
So I think it can be done either way. Why don't we start actually with the going through the roles, because that will help people, I think, understand
Okay.
and folks at home what it is exactly that we're talking about.
Okay, terrific, thanks. So we're going to get back to the timeline in a moment, but before we do that, what we'd like to do is on page 11, you'll find a description of the roles of the consultant, in this case NESDEC and myself, the screening committee and the school committee. So the consultant's role, NESDEC's role, is to search and facilitate. So we have a wide network that we will reach out to so that people who are certified to serve as a school superintendent will know about the position available in Hopkinton. So we do the advertising, for example, as well, and have a number of materials at our disposal. We prepare some customized recruiting materials. We also help the school committee develop the successful candidate profile by holding focus groups, interviewing school committee members, sending out a survey to the community so that we can see what the community wants in terms of its next superintendent. That'll go into a description that you'll approve. And once you approve it, that the selection committee will be able to use that in order to really look at applications to find who might serve as a good superintendent in Hopkinton. So NESDEC does a lot of that logistics, but it's very important for you to understand that this is your search. You will be the ones making all the key decisions, and obviously you'll be the ones selecting the final person. Then for a screening committee's role. So what we want to do is put together a screening committee that does the initial review of applications and does a preliminary interview. That screening committee, we've given you a list of usual roles that end up on the school committee. And tonight we won't talk in terms of people, but in terms of roles. Will you want, for example, a principal to serve on the committee, a parent, and so on? So we'll talk about those roles tonight. That screening committee will review the paper applications, or now they're not on paper anymore, everything's electronic, and will conduct the initial interviews, and then we'll make recommendations for the school committee on finalists. That screening committee goes no further. So their role is to really whittle it down to the best candidates so that the school committee is able to choose from the best and do the final interviews. The school committee's role is to select and appoint, and that is one of the most important jobs of a school committee. So you'll be doing that. And this process, by the way, does take months, and we have a very tight timeline to look at a little while. It is a very doable search, but it is a little bit of a tight search. So with all that in mind, the idea of a liaison is to serve as a means of who I would be able to contact to get some logistical things done. For example, we will need to have rooms available for interviews. We'll need to be selecting individuals for the screening committee. We'll be putting together some customized materials to go out to people in order to advertise for the position. And a lot of that work is done weekly. So that is a weekly role. What I find works best, if there's someone from the school department, either a administrative assistant or an administrator who is not applying for the position, who can serve as a facilitator along with one school committee member. This works best because sometimes there'll be things we need to do, like reserve a room, and sometimes we'll need to make sure something is on the next agenda for the school committee. So we want to definitely have one of each, I find is best. So that is the first decision point you'll be making today. And then rather than hear me talk, after we talk, after you make that decision, we could then go through the timeline, and then we'll work on the other aspects that we need to talk about tonight.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want us to go ahead with that right now and to try to identify that?
I think that would be helpful.
So I think in terms of, and I don't want to put too many people on the spot, but in terms of looking at somebody from the administration, I think the last time we did this, we had our HR director in that role to work as a liaison with NESDEC. I don't know, Sheena, if that's something that you would be interested in doing or able to do.
I
Okay.
would be.
So I would recommend, and obviously we have to take a vote as a committee, but I would recommend Sheena, and I would be interested in taking on the other organizational role as a liaison because I work with Jamie and with Dr. Kavanaugh and Georgette to come up with the agenda. So that's an easy flow in there. And I'm not, I am not looking to serve on the screening committee or some of the other more intense roles. So I'd like to offer that I could do that piece and let others do some of the other roles. Anybody have any thoughts that they have from the committee that you'd like to share on that?
What is the, I'm not muted, right? Right, okay. As far as selecting materials to advertise and things like that, Judy, what is the amount of, like, are those things that generally have been already kind of visualized by the committee or considered, and then it's just, oh yes, that layout looks great, send it out?
Actually, NESDEC has a pretty standard way of sending these notices out. And we have Hopkinton's last information from the last time you did a search, but obviously a lot of information has changed in terms of the size of the district and so on. And so I have a number of examples from other districts, how they describe their community and school system. And what I would be doing is using Hopkinton's data and then drafting something, and then we would discuss it, and it would be then approved by the liaison. So it's more of a matter of a simple description. We're not talking about something elaborate, but we want to get it right. What aspects of your community and school system you want to include in that notice of the position opening.
Like, if I may, Jamie, the application letter is an opportunity for you to sell your district. You want to talk a little bit about the community. You want to talk a little bit about the successes of the district. It's that piece goes out because if I'm a superintendent and I'm looking at perhaps becoming a candidate, that application letter tells me a little bit about who you are, what you are, your successes. And the idea is if it looks appealing to me and I say, hey, that's a great fit for me, I'm able to apply. So it's a collaboration. We have examples, templates, but we want to make it very Hopkinton friendly so that you're basically using that to sell yourself to a potential candidate like myself that's scrolling and saying, hey, maybe I'd like to apply.
So potentially, though, for some of the bigger pieces, we could bring them back. We could have the liaisons look at things and then bring them back to the school committee for approval. Is that
100? Yeah, anything.
Absolutely.
We don't post a thing until the school committee approves it.
Oh,
So
okay.
no
I
matter
was
what we
like,
do.
whoa,
Yeah,
okay.
you'll notice
Yeah.
in
That
the
makes more sense. I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
whoa, that
Yeah.
sounds like
You'll-
actually a really
you'll
big.
no- Yeah, you'll notice in the timeline that I used your school committee meeting dates as key points. And so if say the liaison and I worked on this application letter over the next couple of weeks, we'd be ready to bring it back to the school committee at your next meeting. Because
Okay, great. That answers my question.
Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry, you don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah. Okay, good.
elaborate unless anyone else needs it. I was just
Yeah.
clarifying about that piece. And with that more information, I appreciate that. And I have no reservations with Nancy serving as the liaison.
and Sheena? Is that
And Sheena, right.
Thank
Nancy
you.
as the school committee member and Sheena as the school admin staff.
Is there somebody who would like to make a motion relative to that? It is in our agenda as well, in
Yeah.
terms of.
I move that Nancy Kavanaugh serve as the school committee liaison and that Sheena serve as the administrative liaison on the search committee.
Thank you. So that's a motion by Susan. Is there a second on that?
A second.
Okay, it sounded like I heard Chris first, so we'll do a roll call starting with you, Susan,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and Kyla.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next thing to review is the draft timeline. And so you'll see, I'll go through each step, but it's important to note to go all the way down to the bottom. This assumes a start date for the new superintendent of July 1st. And in working backwards, the person taking the position obviously would need to leave some time to make notice for their current position. And so this has the selection of the superintendent occurring on May 1st. And again, working backwards from there, you would have work being the final interviews. Backwards from there, you have the screening committee work. Backwards from there, you have a community needs assessment and the development of that candidate profile. And then backwards again, you see that there'd be advertisement for the position. And so we really did work backwards in order to fit everything in and make sure that key decision points for the school committee would happen at your meetings. And it is helpful that you have a meeting every 2 weeks. So I'm assuming that, so first, if we take a look step by step, we have the orientation meeting happening today. As I said, the hire date selection would be May 1st, anticipated start date July 1st. Our first work would be to develop this invitational letter, this application letter. We would work with the liaison, but then bring it back to the school committee for your approval. So you have January 16th listed as a date. That's really important to do that at your very next meeting because we would want outreach to happen the very next day after that. So outreach would begin on January 17th. We'd have recruitment through March 5th. So this leaves enough weeks for people to put together their application and gather all the necessary materials. The next part in blue happens while we're collecting applications. And all of this is done through the NESDEC website. We have a system to collect the applications and so on. So we're not looking at paper applications anymore, but this is done by NESDEC. And then while that's happening, we would have the community needs assessment. And you could see that begins starting January 16th. We have tonight, if possible, you determining the focus groups. If you need more time to think about it, at the very latest, we'd have that decision done on January 16th. We would have send out notices to the public right afterwards and to let them know about these focus groups. And then we'd actually conduct the focus groups, and we're hoping to do that the week of February 3rd. It's your decision whether you want them in person or by Zoom. Sometimes there's one done by Zoom and the rest are in person, for example. But that's your decision. And those logistics can get worked out. They don't have to be made exactly right away. We do want to determine the focus groups, which focus groups are going to occur fairly soon so that we can start sending out notices to people to let them know when they'll be. And then once we gather all the data from that, along with the survey that NESDEC will send out to the community. Once we gather that data, we'll put together a draft candidate profile. That'll be a description of the ideal candidate for this position. That would be then sent to you for approval. So we're hoping to send the draft to the school committee by February 14th and then have it approved at your February 22nd meeting. That profile gets used by the screening committee to review the applications and determine questions for an initial interview, so that they know what to focus on, and so that everybody on the screening committee is not just focusing on what's important to them, but they're focusing on what was determined to be important to the entire community. That's the general idea. Then we have the screening committee being recruited and then selected. And we would be determining the roles early, but then there might be, for example, 2 members of the town in general who want to serve. We would look over an simple application to determine which one would be chosen. Same thing for parents. And a lot of times you do that in order to really have a good balance of elementary folks and secondary folks and so on. Once that selection committee is put together, we have NESDEC office will organize the application files. We'd have the selection committee able to look at those applications, make a determination about who will be interviewed for a first interview. NESDEC will do a training for the screening committee. I love that you have an HR director. Not every district has one, and so we'll work together on that. And then the screening committee will individually review the applications and then get together and make the determination about which of those applicants will be interviewed. And that's done at a meeting together. And then the screening committee will actually conduct the interviews. NESDEC it will be helping to organize, calling candidates in order to organize those meetings, but will not take part in those interviews. That really belongs to the selection committee. The screening committee, I'm sorry. And then the screening committee will determine which applicants they will recommend for a final interview with the school committee. So that's kind of that part of the process. NESDEC also works with the finalists to put together these agreements and principles. You certainly don't want one of your finalists to be expecting, for example, a salary that's way out of range from what you're willing to pay, or a candidate won't be available when you want that candidate to be available. So we work with the finalists to make sure that they are ready to be interviewed and are appropriate to be interviewed. And then the school committee, by the way, a big role of the school committee is also to communicate with the public. And so we'll be expecting the school committee to announce the finalists around April 4th or so, and then conduct the finalist interviews the week of April 9th. One step that we're finding is kind of going out of style, if you will, is visit to the finalist districts. It's still done by some districts, but we're finding fewer and fewer actually go and send a team to visit the finalist districts. We can talk about that later. It's definitely not taking place till April if it does take place, but it's something that you should be thinking about at this point. But I put that in the timeline in case you were interested, and that's the week of April 21st. But then we have the second agreement in principle. So now you're getting it down to the very last and candidate, and then you actually select the superintendent. And that is the timeline. And so I'm hoping tonight that you can approve the timeline. You can make any adjustments you see necessary. Small adjustments might be made in the future. I mean, all kinds of things happen, like snowstorms and so on. So we can make small adjustments in the future, but any significant adjustments that you see, you certainly can discuss those tonight.
I think Susan has her hand up. Do you have a question, Susan?
I think I have an answer now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I actually had one question about the timeline. Is there ever a time when there's some overlap between the superintendents so that they have time to mentor each? I don't know.
That is up to you, and it's up to the availability of the new person as well. So in my last position, there was an overlap of several weeks actually. But in the position I held before, there was no overlap. So it really depends on you. You can, if the person is available to start earlier than July 1st, for example, you can make that happen. If your current superintendent is available to stay after July 1st, you can make that happen. But it does happen in some districts, yes.
I was just wondering if that would affect the timeline if we knew that we wanted that.
You might, I mean, it's hard to make this tighter than it is.
Yeah, right.
It really is hard to do that. But if you have a finalist and you know how that person is on May 1st, you certainly in conversations with that person can see if you can make it happen. David, do you have any other?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, for the most part, I have been a superintendent, also recently retired. I've had where I was moving into a district, a very cooperative superintendent that was like, yep, come in, spend some time with me. And then I've gone into districts with superintendents like, sorry, I'm done, I'm over. But if you could work it out with your future hire, there's always a little back and forth. There's time made where it could be at the end of one day, maybe come by your district just to check in. It would really come down to that. After you get past who the finalist is, if it's Dave DeRusi, you sit down with me, you offer me the job, and then that stuff can all be played out. May 1st, if you have a hire by then, you still have several weeks left where even two afternoons just to come in, transition, be with the superintendent, get to meet people. It's really flexible to that point. Crossover in an official way is more difficult because there's probably also the piece that whoever may have this job may be leaving a district. So you don't want to be able to like hang that district out while you're going to. So it's this fine balance. I have done both, where I have gone leaving one district, but on my way home, stopping in the other district for a couple of hours to sit on a budget meeting, to sit in on some hiring. So it really comes down to, you know, who you hire and how you would like them to transition in.
Or potentially consulting with Dr. Kavanaugh to see if she would be able to work a little bit after to make that transition. I think a transition is a nice, it would be ideal to be able to have some work.
And NESDEC offers different, you know, executive coaching pieces where we can help with an entry plan. We can help with, you know, working with your new superintendent, getting them acclimated. So yeah, there's other options.
One question that's a little bit off of what Kyla had, not what Kyla had asked, but is it always is the screening committee always the same that who screens the committee that screens the resumes and the applications versus the committee? Do you ever use a different committee to then do the interviewing? Or is it always one group?
No, the amount of work that goes into being on the screening committee,
Yep.
first of all, we come in, we stress the confidentiality piece, and then I am also glad to see you have an HR person as liaison, because that person's very accustomed to confidentiality through the hiring process. And different districts do different things, from having a town clerk come over and swear everybody into having an HR person. I'm sure you have policy around this, review the policy. But the same screening committee tends to be, that's their role. They're going to screen those applicants. They'll interview them. And then through us, they will move the next body to the school board committee for the finals. However, we also advise you put a school committee member on the search committee. So it could be Nancy as the liaison. It could be somebody else. You can't have a quorum, but you should always have a school committee member on that screening committee, so they get to see the full function of that, and they bring it back when the time comes. Then they're part of the final hiring as a school committee.
And I think the last time we, definitely the last time we did a search for a superintendent, we had 2 school committee members that were able to
Yep.
serve on that screening committee. And I think that was really beneficial to be able to bring that voice forward as we moved
It's
on.
very helpful. It is.
It is, and it's very common to have 2. So that's a good idea.
You just can't have a quorum of your
Mhm.
members on it. That's all.
Right.
I have a question about the timeline.
Mhm.
Specifically, so I am interested in serving on the screening committee. The timeline is a little tough, as I am out of the country the week of the 17th of March. So I don't know if there's any nudging, like up or down slightly, that could be done, because I know the 17th is marked there, and the 20th and 21st. As far as that interview, like the primary interviews happening March 20th to 26th. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, so what I would suggest, we definitely can tweak this timeline. What I think I would suggest, though, is if we knew who the 2 school committee members were going to be on the selection committee, we tweak it now. Because when we send out notices to, let's say, parents who wants to serve on the selection committee, we want to provide those dates so they know if they're available. And so we
Right.
first want to make sure the 2 school committee members who are on the selection committee are available. So if we knew right now, you might want to discuss who those 2 will be. We can make those tweaks right now. And if we can get it as close to the, close to the 17th,
Yeah.
but we might be able to do it maybe just before you leave, for example. We can make those adjustments for certain.
sure. Should we have that conversation?
So I have one other question before we have that conversation, because I want to make sure that before we make decisions on that, we know if the full scope, if there are other things that people might be interested in doing. In terms of the selecting the community members and the parents who serve on that screening committee, in the past, we had 2 members of the school committee who reviewed the community applications, just because I think as a body of the an elected body, we know a lot of the community members who would be applying. Is that a potential role that you would see, that we could have 2 school committee members review those community applications if they were interested in?
Oh, I
giving-
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, NASDAQ wouldn't be picking that committee. It would be the school committee, and how whatever their decision is on how those bodies would be selected. Our advice is you want to try to keep it manageable, somewhere between 9 and 12 members. That's why we say positions are important. But I've been on them as big as 21, and that becomes a little unwieldy. And I've been on some as small as 7. So It really comes up to how you want to arrange and screen for your screening.
Right.
And I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I feel like probably staff would be able to screen staff better than the committee would be able to fill the after we've identified what roles we want from within. But the community piece in particular, I feel like.
Yeah.
Would be Susan, I can see you have your, oh, go ahead, Judy.
Oh, I was going to say, involving other members of the school committee as much as possible in the process, I think is a great idea. So if you, for example, served as liaison and you had 2 people on the selection committee, and then you had 2 people to review parent and community members' involvement in the selection committee, that involves everybody.
Right. That's what I was thinking as well.
I mean, it's up to you how you do it, but I think it's a great idea.
It seems like the 2 doing, if we went forward with that proposal, the 2 people on the committee selecting community members to serve on the screening committee, while it would be reasonable to get feedback from staff, it seems like the school committee should be the one selecting.
So I think, I don't know how that, I mean, in terms of selecting from the community, but like in terms of teachers who are applying to be on the screening committee, before we get to the screening committee, we could have 2 members do that, but my guess is somebody within the school district would know the teachers better to select within their own, or to have the HTA select their person, or we've in the past like asked CPAC to select their own person, but the people that aren't affiliated with a particular other organization, the school committee selected. Does that make sense to you, even if you don't think it's, am I clear, I guess, in what I'm trying to say?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And having just 2 members, I think, makes it much easier so that you're not discussing community members at an open meeting. That could be awkward.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Whether you want
Yeah,
the fire chief or the police chief, you don't, that feels a little awkward. But if you had a couple of members who reviewed and said, oh, look, here we have, the fire chief who also is a parent at school, that's a perfect,
Right.
they know the people, your community, and you know how to balance things off. But usually the teacher chosen may come from the union might decide, or the administrative team might decide who to have on the as an administrator. So we can have those conversations at moving forward. But if we can at least choose what roles you want, not the actual people's names.
Like the
as
categories.
Yes.
I
That's
see
useful.
Susan's hands up again. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I very much would like to serve on the screening committee, and I don't think I have, being retired teacher, I have my dates are wide open. So
I'm going to make a quick suggestion here. First thing the school committee needs to do is come up with a number. How many people? We don't need that tonight. You have to discuss this amongst yourselves, because you have to decide how many positions do we want on the screening committee? That's phase 1. So if the committee decides we're going to do 15, now you have that number. Then you start to load in your positions. Then you're right, I would like a CPAC parent representation. No, there's 1 position, there's 1 member of the screen. We would love the union president or vice president. There's your staff. So you could individually reach out to people, but I think the bigger discussion for this committee is how many members of it do you want on the screening committee? Because you'll get 500 applicants, you're only going to need 15. So then you want to look through, we have special ed representation, we have union staff representation, we have administrative representation, we have this community, we have somebody from the town, maybe the town manager want. So you start to go, but you need your number first. And I think that's something you can discuss amongst yourselves. And that's where the liaisons to Judy come in handy, because when you arrive at that decision, then she would know how many to begin to plan for that screening committee. And that will help whoever you choose to kind of filter those positions and roles. Because if you leave it wide open to the bitter end, you're going to get 30 people that want to be on it, but you're not going to be able to put all 30 on it, but you cap it. You say, we're going to start a committee of, I say 15, 9 to 12, whatever you decide, and then you start to plug your roles in after that. So I think that should, and we do not need that tonight. There's a lot on your plate right now, even regarding the timeline. If you needed more time as a committee just to discuss that without us here, all the liaison has to do is let Judy know when you've made those tweaks. Jamie, back to you. There's always wiggle room in that final, I don't know what color it is, salmon or purple at the bottom. That's where the school committee gets to say, you know what, we're not going to finalist districts. So you gain some time there. Or the school committee says, all right, there's going to be, we want 5 finalists coming out of the screening committee. We're going to do this type of interview process. There's your wiggle room. So as much as that's a tight schedule in front of you, it's when it really comes down to the school committee's work, and we come in and talk and train you the committee for that. But there's your wiggle room down at the bottom. So you do have some time in there, depending upon how the school committee chooses to do their interview process. So let's say you have 6 finalists, 5 finalists. You may want them a day in district. You may want to do 2 half days, 1 in, then an interview. We'll help you with that. But right now, you did the bulk of the work. You named the liaisons, which will help Judy's life immensely. And she can now work some of these other fine details out with them and the board. So there's a lot on your plates right now. Don't feel the pressure to answer it all tonight. You've already you have a draft timeline in front of you. You've named the liaisons. I think moving forward, the next big thing you have to think about, 4 to 6 focus groups. Do you want them all in person? Do you want a combination like this, 2 in person, 2 hybrid? Do you want 6 or 4? So those are your next big pieces that as a committee you have to decide. So we don't even need to know that until, I'm looking right now, the focus groups wouldn't kick off till February 3rd. So while it's a tight timeline, but you still have time to think about that, maybe by the next meeting.
Yeah. We also need to make sure that the community, communication to the community happens with sufficient time, because if people find out about focus groups the week before, they get upset, like they didn't even want me there, you know? And so even with this timeline, if we knew the 2 school committee members who will serve on the screening committee, then we could tweak this. I could tweak this timeline with those 2 people offline, and then you could approve the timeline at your next meeting. Or we could tweak it together right now, and then you could approve it, and then we could move forward with other steps of the process.
So one other piece I just want to make sure is clear before we kind of move forward is the screening committee. I know the last time that we did this, the screening committee met in the day, but when you and I had talked, it sounds like most of these screening committee meetings in other districts are happening in the evening to be respectful of candidates' need to take days off.
And yes, and the other people on the screening committee, people in the community or parents, they may work as well. And so having it in the evening really meets more people's needs. So that's kind of the usual process. if the screening committee together decided to, starting at 3 o'clock works, then that'll be something that we could schedule with them later on.
And remind me again, how many total, about how many hours of a commitment is that? In
It's
total, about how many?
It's a couple hours for the first meeting. For the second meeting, you're actually coming to the meeting to discuss who you think should be interviewed. That takes at least a couple hours, if not 3. I'll just say 2. So to say that's 4 hours. And then the week of the actual interviews, it certainly depends on how many you interview, but it could be in discussing the questions, what questions to ask. Honestly, that could be 10 to 12 hours right there. So
For the interviews?
yeah, so we're talking about, it could be together 15 or so hours. I mean, I'm not being precise because it does matter how many candidates you choose to interview and so on, but it is a hefty commitment.
Judy, about how many people do you get applying for one of these positions?
Oh, David could tell you, the last one I was involved with had 18, I believe. But David, how many have been coming in from most of the districts?
We've been averaging right now, I would say, we had 2 in Rhode Island where we brought in over 25 candidates. I was
Wow.
even in New Hampshire doing one last year with 15. It was a small regional.
Mhm.
And Two Rivers, Vermont, we managed to even pull in 15 for a town that size. Hopkinton is an attractive district.
That's
You
true.
will have no problem finding candidates. You have already an outstanding reputation in the world of superintendents. So I think you will do well, and we have a big reach. So you could, a Missouri superintendent took and got the New Hampshire position, and I was shocked. I ran that search, but yeah, we had one from Missouri, one from Colorado, and the gentleman from Missouri is now the superintendent in Kearsarge, New Hampshire. So we can bring people in for you.
So if you can assume somewhere between 15 and 25 applications,
Yeah.
for example, you're certainly not going to be reviewing 50 to 100 applications. And that part of the process, usually you could narrow it down, whittle it down in half right away, pretty quickly. And then the selection committee may discuss further the other half of the applicants, which ones are really rise to the top.
That was
Just
going to
a-
be my question. How many, you might get 25 resumes, but in the winnowing process, how many do you actually end up with that are truly even entering the hallway of being qualified for the job?
Well, again, the good part is the way the screening committee works for us, and this would all be explained in 2 separate meetings with the screening committee once it's picked and chosen. What we like to do is we will get, if let's say we do get 25 applicants from our end, NESDEC, we'll make sure that their paperwork is in place. We'll make sure their certs are all in the right place. But we give all of the applicants to that screening committee. And the way they do this for us is it's a paper screen. We set them up with a very simple tool. It's a basic SurveyMonkey, weighted in some aspect. And what they'll do is individually review all the candidates. And then they quietly, in the comforts of their own home, rate them. They'll say, we would love, number 1, yep, we want to see Dave again. You click on Dave DeRusi 1. Okay. Dave DeRusi, yeah, we somewhat want to see him. You click Dave DeRusi 2. If there's no real value to bring Dave DeRusi in for an interview, you click 3. So each member goes through all of that. When all of that is tallied at NESDEC, when we come back for that second screening committee meeting, your committee has already done their work. The top 5 candidates are going to show right there based on 75% want to see Dave. He's number 1. 3% want to see Kyla. She's number 2. And then our job at that meeting is to go walk through all of those ratings, and your screening committee will then make the decision, who do we want to interview? So that process will, I think Susan said it, it'll thin it right down. The dialogue in that room that night is, so Judy came in the middle of the pack. Do we want to see Judy? Maybe, maybe not. And the dialogue and the debate will have, and then Judy may move up. Yep, we want to see Judy, and maybe Dave drops down. That's the decision of that entire committee. However, there should be a frame of how many candidates, they may want to screen. The average is anywhere between 6 and 8 to 10, depending upon the pool.
Yeah.
So that's where, Nancy, that work comes in. If you're trying to set up an interview schedule, if you're going to bring in, let's say 8 people, you've got to find time to do that.
Yeah. The other thing about that meeting too is some people will have looked at interviews with their lens, whatever their lens might be, and they might have noticed something that other people didn't. So you have this conversation about the candidates, and I've seen candidates move up or down that list based on the conversation in the room. So that's why it's great having, that variety of people on the selection committee. But if you get beyond 12, 15 is pretty large as well. It really becomes very difficult to have a deep conversation. So that's why the number on the selection committee, it's important for you to really think about that. More is not always better. We recommend 9 to 11 or so. But sometimes, you might need to have a certain representative that we haven't thought of. But you should be thinking about that now.
And another thing to think about is each interview is a screening. It's an hour. So you're going to have, if you have 1 hour with me as somebody you're interviewing, and there's 10 of you in the room, or 11 or 12, at 2 minutes a question, because you're going to need time for, introduce yourselves. You're going to need a bit at the end for me. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dave? So you want to be able to keep it to a manageable number. Just for that reason alone, you only have these candidates for 1 hour. And you're going to screen them. That's the process. You're going to meet them. You're going to see them in person. We have, crafted questions we'll give to the screening committee prior. You'll work on them, get them ready for the interviews. But it's really the work of the screening committee is the driver of this whole process. They're going to do that heavy lift. They will review those candidates. They will then screen them. And then their job is done when they say, these are the 4 or 5 we're going to move up to the school board. And then they step out of the picture. So they're the engine. They're driving this. Everything else with the liaison, the paper pieces, that work in the gray of that screening committee is the absolute engine that moves this search for you. Their job is they're going to do their best to give you the best candidates as a school committee. And that's something we stress along with confidentiality, that they're not making the final decision. Their job is to make sure they're moving the right candidates forward so the school committee can get the best of the best they saw and let the school committee come to their terms on who would lead the district next.
So after hearing all of that, I just want to kind of look to the committee to see who feels that they can manage the time commitment around that and is also interested in being on that screening committee?
Nancy, I have the availability and I'm interested as well.
Okay.
I'm also
at-
interested. Sorry.
Kyla, I
Yeah.
didn't, I had trouble hearing exactly what you said.
Oh,
It
sorry.
cut
I
out.
said I'm also interested.
Okay,
Yep, and same.
okay. So that leaves four who are interested in it. Would it be most helpful, Judy, for us to try to narrow down of the 4 people? Or is that something that you feel like we would be better off selecting the number of the people on the committee and coming back to that? We have another meeting next week.
Yeah. You can make both decisions next week, certainly. Because and what I could do is if each of you can look at the timeline, what would be very helpful is if you emailed me any changes you would have to make if you were on the committee. I could come with several different choices for timelines for the next meeting, and then we could be ready from there. Because I'll
Okay.
want to make some adjustments so that you'll be able to vote on a timeline at your next meeting.
Does anybody on the committee want to give any food for thought on how you're thinking in terms of what would either why you or one of the other people who has expressed interest would be ideal for the position? Anybody have any?
I'll toot my own horn and say that as a teacher, I worked with a number of superintendents, particularly when I did grievances and negotiations. So I kind of have developed a feel for how interactions with that candidate might go if they were superintendent.
Thank you, Susan.
Nancy, and again, my experience is in, finding similar roles for commissioners of various leagues that we've been in. I know I had raised my hand for one of the other, for the bargaining
Yep.
committee. So want to get involved more than I am now and feel I could help out and have some experience in similar kind of search. I think everyone on the committee is obviously qualified and would do a good job, but I don't want to sit on my hands and not offer to help.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you.
My interest, I think, is based around my involvement in the school district with the PTO and then CPAC and then school committee. I've been serving as vice chair this year. I'm also a teacher and working on my doctorate in education. And all the different interactions that I've had with our superintendent and administrative staff over the past few years in all those various roles, as well as lots of interaction with the public, dealing with our school system in various angles and ways, and working to continue to make it better and keep supporting everyone in our district. I'm really passionate about that. So that's why I'm volunteering.
Thank you. Kyla, did you want to say anything?
Sure. I would say 2 different things. One, I think Susan's perspective is very valuable. I agree with her that her experience as a former teacher would play very good into this role. For myself, I work with a lot of different superintendents in my day job and work among a lot of different school districts and understand the functioning of, relationships between school district staff and superintendents and what they do to work together.
Right. Thank you.
Nancy, could I just make a quick, are there any more questions for NESDEC right now? regarding the process where we're at. Because again, this is, you got a lot to process. While it is a bit of a tight timeline, I think you still have some pieces to work out amongst the committee. But is there anything left for us that you would need us present for right now in this meeting?
So let me just pull, so do we want to talk about the number for the screening committee? Do you want to take that away, or I suppose we could also send you that information? Do
Yeah,
people,
we're good if you want to debate this and discuss this as you, the committee. And again, we're here to help you with questions, but as you begin to define it more, that's where the key to this meeting is that getting the liaisons for us. You don't know how much that puts us at ease right now as we work with you, but you still have a few pieces hanging here that I think, you know, we don't want to put you on the spot to make a rush decision because we're here. There is time before the next meeting. You do have the liaison. So as a board, if you want to begin to work, even just review that timeline tighter and then make suggestions to Judy, that works just as easy as trying to figure it all out with us here right now. We're flexible to work with you on this. And this, you do have a little more work to sort out for yourselves. You need to discuss, go back to just how many members on the screening committee, what's the, how, you know, and then all of that stuff we don't need tonight. So I feel like we don't want to put pressure on you like, quick, we need this now, we need this now. We don't. We want you to make good choices. And when you make those choices, let your liaison reach out to Judy, and Judy and I and Christina and we'll build it all out for you. I just didn't know if you had any more questions that are NESDEC specific.
does anybody have NESDEC specific questions, things that you want advice on, or that you think we as a committee need advice on before we make decisions about either the composition of the screening committee, the number of people we wanted, or any of the other pieces before us?
Can I clarify? I was hearing a slight disagreement between the number, like the total number ideal, 9 to 12. And when I, read through the list, it seems like the list that's in the packet that you provided, that's 11 or 12 versus up to 15. And it sounds like the critical mass is really important, that we manage that 1 hour timeline. And so is 15 over the tipping point? Is that a little?
No, all right. So again, we put guidelines. I sat in a search and there was 21 on the screening committee. So they filled the room. It was big. The problem with the bigger the number, then you have to decide. So we have let's say we have 15, 16 people here. Not all of you on that screening committee will be able to have a question to ask. So now some of you will be just sitting and interviewing without saying, now you add a layer of complexity. Who's going to ask what questions? Who's going to say? And I think
there's one other piece too. With a large committee, each individual ends up feeling like they don't have a voice.
Right.
Because you're sharing, you obviously have to share the table with other members of the committee. So if the committee is very large, it's often difficult to get your voice heard. So having a committee that's 10 to 12 is probably ideal. Sometimes when school committees try to narrow it down, they feel politically they need to have this other person or this other person. I know that Hopkinton had 15 last time and had a very successful search. I think that's probably at the top, but ideally it would be 10 to 12. But it is your decision. You got to understand kind of the benefits. You have more representation with a bigger group, but there are drawbacks in that each individual doesn't feel like they have as much of a voice.
I definitely agree with Judy. thinking about the size of the group, that if it's 12, it's much easier to manage a discussion and everybody feels they have a part in the plan.
And again, don't forget, you have focus group opportunity, you have surveys, you will be able to gather a larger voice. And I think that's where, if done properly, the surveys have been, you keep messaging the survey, you'll probably set up a superintendent search link on your webpage to keep people posted. The survey comes in huge, it becomes part of the candidate profile. Your focus groups, you can invite everybody under the sun plus and see who shows up, who's there. And again, school committee members should and would attend those focus groups. We would ask like maybe Jamie to attend one, Nancy to attend, whatever fits your schedule, as long as you don't have a quorum. You come to the focus groups, the people see you there. That's where you could set them up, structure. So you may have one a little bit earlier in the afternoon, say 3:34, to capture your staff, capture your administrators. Then you may want one more towards the evening. And then you may want a combination of Zoom and in person. So people that can't make it in person can Zoom in at 7 o'clock at night and be heard and get to, we use 2 basic prompts, same prompts for every focus group. And what's nice about the survey, it's an anonymous survey, but you click on based on your role. So let's say I'm a teacher, you click on teacher. So you're able to get a pie graph of who position-wise, role-wise, went into the survey. So you can really see who responded just based not by names, but by roles and positions. So again, I think you still have work to do. We didn't mean to overload you tonight. There is no like, you have May 1st as the ultimate, you're going to announce and hire your new superintendent. You have wiggle room in here. And again, there has to be flexibility in this timeline because you could get hit with a snowstorm on a focus group and next thing you know, you're redoing them. So we allow for that. And again, I think these are little pieces that as a committee, you have to kind of discuss. How many do you want? 12, beautiful. Now, what school committee members will represent on that? That's once you sort all that out, someone just has to give us that information and we're rocking and rolling. We're doing what we do.
Dave, what was the size you suggested for focus groups? Did you think like
I would
12?
try to get as many people into the room as possible. So I find 4 focus groups. You have in the proposal, you have 4 to 6. So again, that's your range. People tend to be leaning towards 4. It's manageable. You can do 4 in person over 2 nights, 2 days. You could do 2 in person, 2 Zoom meetings. Again, those are decisions the committee will make. And we just give you a ballpark of the date of that week of February 3rd to be able to tell us, yep, because like Judy said, you're going to want to get information out to your community a good 2 weeks before that date. So yeah, decide 4 or 6, that's up to you.
The
That's a
focus
committee.
groups, do they have to, is it just anybody who shows up or they have to be selected?
Oh, it's anyone who shows up.
Okay.
Yep. Now, what
Yep.
some committees have done is there's like to make it more, I don't want it to, when people have to sign up for something, they tend to show up more. So yes, some committees would say there's a sign, like we're taking like sign up for what night. So let's say you decide to do them on a Wednesday night and you then decide we're going to do them, like I said, maybe one little bit earlier in the evening. So you capture staff before they go home or they're leaving and administrators running. And then you could have they could be like signing up. And other than that, but for the most part, you just pump it out there, you put out the information and whoever shows up comes through the door and we're there to facilitate it. But again, the decision is all in person or you want to do a hybrid.
I think we
Couple Zoom.
definitely need to do at least one hybrid.
Well, again, those are all decisions that you can make as the committee. And once made, you let us know and then we build it out. Again, we have blank templates that you could use. You just put, your district on it, and you can start to publicize this. I think the next step too, I always recommend, is make sure you have something on your website, update superintendent search, and then your liaison should speak to it almost every agenda for the actual board meetings. This way you keep the public informed. But again, those are all details we technically don't need tonight. This was really to get us a liaison, get you to understand the process. And I will always tell you, the screening committee is the workhorse. They're going to do the work. They're the heavy lift. So that's a time commitment. And I think you have to be honest with anybody you bring on that board. You can't miss one interview and then expect to do the other 8 or 9. And we stress that first night, and we give people the option, you know, if this is too much, let us know. But the other thing is we'll give you a blank template on how to build the schedule once you figure out how many people you do want to interview as a screening committee. We set that all up, and you tell us the days, the times, and the places.
Okay.
And you can email any of Judy, myself, Christina, anytime. So let's say we're off the call in 10 minutes and all of a sudden, oh, why didn't we ask that? Just flip us an email tomorrow and we can get back to you. It's not that. So we're here. You got 3 of us tonight. We have other people in the office that help us out. So we'll always respond.
So is your next meeting, what date is that next meeting? Is it the 16th?
The
We
ninth.
have the 9th. Do we?
Oh, no.
The 9th.
Oh,
Yep.
you have a meeting on the 9th.
All right, that's not.
Oh, that's only next week.
Yes, we have meetings the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd of this
Oh,
month.
wow.
Well,
So
the good part. Go ahead.
I'm
Judy.
I'm available at on the 9th and the 16th. I do think making the decision about the timeline, what focus groups you want to have, and what roles will be on the screening committee and its size
Right, the
are
9th.
key to do as soon as possible.
Right.
Right now, you have this special meeting. Everybody's absorbing everything. You might want to discuss some of these things tonight to be
And then
ready
let us
for the next meeting and vote on it at the next meeting. Or because I'm sure you have other agenda items at your next meeting too. Or you might want to wait for that next meeting. But I can be made available for that next meeting as well.
So just because our next few meetings are pretty
Mhm.
busy with budget stuff as well, if there's anything that, anything else that as a committee, people feel like we could move forward with to decide tonight, I think that would be helpful. I think, for example, if we could come to an agreement on the number of people that we want on the screening committee, that maybe is the low hanging fruit in making that decision, so to speak. I came into this thinking that I want to be as inclusive as we can with people in the community to involve in the process, as well as people that work within the district. So my bias was admittedly towards the larger number. I also hear, though, tonight I'm a little swayed by hearing that bigger is not better, and does not, it may lead to people feeling like their voices are less heard. I like 12 personally. I don't know how do other people feel in terms of size?
I think,
Number that was in my head.
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think 12 is just about right.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. And then, so 2 of those will be school committee members. So we would look for 10 from the community. We can think about that from looking at this list and maybe be prepared to make a decision next week unless people feel pretty clear tonight where you want to go with that. Like who you think we could brainstorm who we want to make sure is on the screening committee in addition to us, or not us, I mean 2 school committee members, because it won't be
I
all of
think
us.
it would be really good when we start doing that, Nancy, if you kind of give us a sense of who from the community was on the last one. I know I looked at the list, but you know, the type of individuals, I guess. I
Yeah.
could say.
So let me just, I'm going to pull up.
Is this something that we should keep NESDEC here for, or?
No, we
No.
can, yeah, NESDEC, David and Judy and Christina, if you guys want to, we can circle back to you guys so you guys can.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't mind staying on if you have a question and, or I could just, be prepared to come to your next meeting.
All of this that you're discussing can be sent to Judy in an email tomorrow morning or at the end
Yep.
of this. And we'll take it from there. And this way you'll have it all cleared up. You should spend some time with that timeline, either individually or tonight, look at it. And if you need tweaks to it, again, get that to Judy. We don't need to be here for this part, and it's sometimes easier if we're not, so that everybody can talk freely and you can try to get a little bit of the work done. But again, whatever you come up with, you've got 12, yep, figure it all out, send Judy an email, CC me on it tomorrow, and we'll take it from there. And if we have any questions, we'll reach out, or you can reach out and set up a phone call or a Zoom one-on-one with us tomorrow or the next day for clarity. How's
That's
that
great.
work?
Thank you.
Awesome. Nancy,
Appreciate
you've been a great help. Everybody, I appreciate this. It seems complex. We'll get you through it. This is what we do. I'll say we're good at it, and we'll get you through this, and we'll put a good search together with your help. We'll facilitate what you need to get this job done. And
That's
I
great. Thank
for
you so
your time
much.
tonight. All right,
Thank
thank you.
Okay,
Have a nice day. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
good luck, everyone. Bye.
Bye. All right, so in terms of the people, I did send an email that had the list from, I think, the last 2 or 3 searches. I'm just trying to pull that up. I sent it the night of our meeting that was at the middle school.
Yeah, it was a lot longer.
Because we had 15 last time.
Right.
And it's funny because I really did think 15 plus was better until hearing what they had to say. So that was helpful.
Well, and the search, or I mean, I think it was more the finalists that we saw, but we saw I was the CPAC rep for the interviews where we interviewed Abby Hanscom.
Oh, right.
And
Do you
remembering
remember how many people were there for that?
because it was you and another school committee member, and then CPAC, and then there were, I think, 2 different special educators, a nurse, a BCBA, a special ed, or a teacher, a para, the administrator. There may have been 10.
Okay.
There may have been 10.
Yeah.
Because we filled that table, that conference room table.
We did. And I think the last time when they did this, and I wasn't on the screening committee for the last superintendent search, but I think they met not in that room. I think they met over in maybe a conference room over at the middle school, possibly where we do negotiations over there. Oh, no, we don't do them in there, but we meet in that area. There's a room back there. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to pull that. Does anybody happen to have it handy?
What list are we looking for?
It's the one I sent out that had the screening committees from the last.
Yeah,
2 or
I
3.
had 2017 up, the 2011, and then the unknown year.
Yeah,
The unknown year had 12 people on it.
Yep, and then 2011 was 13, 2017 was 15. Would you like us to read out what the categories are?
so I have them, I do have them in front of me now.
Oh,
I'm trying to, so I mean, I think definitely having a CPAC member is something that we have, it would be an expectation from the community. I don't know if anybody has a different opinion on that.
I think it would be an expectation from CPAC. I think they'd get
And
pretty
from CPAC,
irritated.
yeah.
Do we need to consider LPAC?
I think capturing the community that LPAC serves. Yes, at my last meeting, there were only 2 folks on the board. So I'm not sure what the best recruitment would be for that, to make sure that we're meeting that
I
group.
was going to suggest Thatch, the South Asian Circle instead. I
Hmm.
think it's a very important group in town. They're looking to really get involved in matters, and I think it would be a good group to include in the superintendent search.
And
I
they
think-
So
well of potential people who are interested.
Mhm.
can I ask kind of as a counter what you think about, so that we don't have to choose on the spot which group to choose between them, that we put like something like supportive groups within the community and include it kind of in what we're
Mhm.
looking for as a number of different groups that support our students in our community, including SATCH, including LPAC, and to choose one group may have more people interested in the other. I know LPAC is a great group, but they don't always have as many people that are available, and that might not make them want it as much, but I wouldn't want them to not be considered as part of it. But, and then to choose from that larger group, does that make sense?
Mhm.
When we think about the select board, do we have a liaison to the school committee from the select board?
So we do, but I think because this is such a big time commitment, I think it would be better to not specify a specific person and let the select board figure out who's available for that amount of time. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than say the one particular member we want a select board member, and they can figure out if they want to put
Absolutely.
the person who's the liaison is able to do it. Certainly
Mhm.
that's great. If it's somebody else, that's also great, based on availability. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I know, I gotta go back to look at the list here. So we had a secondary principal in 2017. Looks like in 2011, we had the high school principal at the time, and so I guess, do people want to specify administrators by specific like category, like by principals, or by like the administrative team as a whole? How do people want to?
Would it be appropriate, because the screening committee takes so much time, I'm assuming that the administrators have administrative meetings, that they could select someone that would be representative for them. Because they know each other so much better, they would, I think, have a feel for who would be good.
I think that's I like that suggestion.
Same would be, I think, HTA and CPAC and things is kind of, we kind of specify the entities we would like to see on the screening committee. And if they can do it quickly, select somebody to represent them.
I agree with that. I think that's a great piece. In the past, we've had more than one administrator. I don't, so, and I have heard I did hear from one of the principals that is interested in serving on the committee, but I don't know if there are other administrators that would be important to have as well. I think we would benefit from having an assistant superintendent or somebody else from central office there as well.
Can I ask a really odd question, I guess?
Sure.
How, I think Carol would be great on the committee, but I don't know if that's kosher.
I'm going to let Carol answer that because I have not seen that in Hopkinton, but I don't know if that's common other places. And not to put you on the spot also right here in the thing, but is that?
I think that's an unusual practice to have the outgoing superintendent on the search committee. But I would be happy to help with kind of figuring out which administrators are available and interested in making the time commitment. We have an admin council meeting next Tuesday morning, and all 28 administrators are in the room together. So I'm happy to start that discussion with them.
That would be great.
So how many administrators before we send Carol out to find somebody, how many administrators do we think would be the best number for the committee?
To be clear, we're including anyone in the principal position or a director position or an assistant superintendent position.
So yes, I would think, although I don't know, are the directors, like the director of student services would be part of the administrative team, but like, I don't know that all director level positions are on the admin in that group of 28.
They are, including
They
the
are,
athletic
okay.
director. Yeah. Tim,
Okay.
Person, director of
Yep.
facilities, he would be in that group as well.
And I think that's a good group to have more than one, just because they work closely with the superintendent.
I was going to say, we don't want to have I think we would want to designate central office versus principal, because we wouldn't want just central office people. We wouldn't want just principals.
Okay, so we want to say central office and then a principal as well, because I think they're both.
So you're kind of looking for two, you think?
So I think, yeah, it is.
I think two.
I definitely think we should have an elementary and a secondary.
Oh, so you think
Principal-
three?
That's
So, but
Yeah,
with
the three.
I'm sorry, Jamie, what did you just say? I missed that.
that ends up being well, I mean, it depends on what we want. Like 3 out of 12 is.
So the other piece is we could
Teachers.
do, if we don't want to do 3 out of 12, we could look to do it, the teachers that were asked the HTA or have teachers selected by, if we end up with an elementary principal, ask for teachers to be from middle school or high school kind of, or do you know what I mean? Try to balance the representation out that way, because I think we also want teachers to be part of this process.
Yeah, I'm happy to get some people from the admin team who would be interested and share those names with you.
I'm looking in 2017. Did we not have an HTA member in 2017?
Doesn't look
guidance
like it.
Yeah, guidance would have been HTA.
Was Shelley Moran on that list in 2017?
Yes, she
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, she would have been an HTA member as well.
She was the
Okay.
elementary math director.
So do we want to designate 2 HTA members and have them figure out if they want to send guidance or math directors or, third grade teachers or whatever, figure out who it is that they want to send themselves, but designate how many HTA members.
It's been,
I think we should give them a target for how many HTA members.
Yeah.
right, yes.
So the other piece is we want other community members would be my thought. We will end up with community members with CPAC and another support organization, as well as the select board is also community. But in terms of looking at parents, do we want to go with 2 on the, like, what do people think?
I think it makes sense to game out what it looks like if we have 2 HTA members and 2 administrative reps.
Okay.
And then that leaves us 3 spots left.
So I'm not seeing 3. So I'm seeing 2 school committees for 1 and 2. 3 is CPAC, 4 is the other support organization. Or are you including that other support with CPAC?
No, I'm not. No. So,
Okay. So that would be, yep.
CPAC,
So there's 3.
and select board, school admin rep, central office, school admin rep, principal, HTA, HTA, and that leaves 3 more blanks on my list going to 12.
So
How many
I have
HTA?
2. Number 1 is a school committee member. Number 2 is school committee member. I have 3 is CPAC. Number 4 is the support organization. 5 is the select board. 6 is the administrator. Oh, you know what? I think I counted that. I put that twice by accident. Because were we doing?
We're
Did we
doing
say
2.
1 central? Did we 2?
1 central office and 1 principal.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to drag you through that exercise, but I had to figure out where I was off. All right, so
That's
2
fine.
HTA
3
leaves us
left.
with 3 left.
And so previously, and they listed, NESDEC listed having a student council member.
So that we have not done.
I know, I don't remember seeing that before.
I do have concerns,
Oh, no.
and I love students.
2011, there was a Hopkinton High School.
Okay. My only concern is that if there are people from within the district that apply for a position, they're looking at highly confidential things of people that, I don't know, that
It may be a large burden to put on a student.
a large burden to put on a student and a lot of hours when you're looking at what high school students are doing. At that point, it might be a lot of work for them to balance with homework and other things.
Yeah.
What were? Go over the positions you already have.
So 2 school committee members,
Okay,
a CPAC representative,
okay,
a representative from another support organization, a select board member, in a central office administrator, a principal, and 2 HTA members. So that's 10
I don't
people.
think you should, I don't think you need 2 HTA members.
No, those are the teachers.
The teachers,
Well,
right?
yeah. I guess when
teachers.
I hear you say HTA, they may be members, but I think in terms of leadership from HTA.
So when I say HTA, I don't necessarily mean to indicate, I mean people within that bargaining unit. So it could be a guidance counselor, it could be somebody from their leadership, or it could be, a teacher from any part of the
Yeah,
district.
because when I looked at the list, it just seemed like, maybe, at one of the lists, I think I saw, like a guidance counselor, their focus is going to be on, guidance and kids and stuff. Whereas if you have a designated HTA person from maybe a leadership position, who's able to look at how their focus would be on how will the conversations go with central office if we have to discuss things in terms of HTA, the union.
Yeah, I think just historically in labeling people, we used to call anybody who was in the bargaining unit an HTA member. So like, for example, Shelley Moran was in 2017 in the bargaining unit. So we would have called her an HTA member at the time.
But she wasn't in leadership of HTA.
That's correct. I mean, I don't know if she was a building rep or something, but
Right, but
may have been or may not have been. I don't know.
yeah.
So the other piece I'm looking at as you're talking, Susan, is that it looks like in the past, last time and when we say guidance, I think at this point, just the way things have shifted and evolved in the district, we would also mean adjustment counselors or somebody from that counseling role. That has been, I think, typically, at least in the last two, designated. But I'm happy to leave it. However,
I just believe that the Teachers Association, because they interact so often,
yeah,
that they need to select somebody from their leadership who will get along well with others and be able to ask the questions or get the vibe of how things
So-
will go with that superintendent.
So do
person.
we want to designate it then as one member of the HTA board?
Yeah, or HTA leadership.
HTA leadership. Yes, that's the word. And
Yeah.
then one,
Because we don't necessarily want the president there.
well, but we might, I mean, that,
We
I
might,
don't
but-
think we want to say one way or the other. I think it's up to the HTA really to
Yeah,
designate who from leadership they would like to be there. I think, that the president is obviously a great person because because she has a lot of history, or the
Oh,
vice
yeah.
president or somebody in a leadership role like that. But I
Right.
think it's also important to have somebody else within the HTA that represents a different part of
oh,
the
yeah,
HTA.
just the general, yeah.
Does that, what do other people think about that?
So we would say someone from HTA leadership and then
And
a
somebody who's,
teacher.
well, I mean, it's hard because like the leadership is also teachers.
Right.
Um,
And we had discussed
an
how
HTA member.
we had a principal, say if we had the middle school principal, having a teacher rep from the middle school would not give us as wide a opinion.
So maybe the thing to do with the HTA would be to wait until after the central office, sorry, not the central office, but the building-based administrator, the principal has been selected, and then ask for HTA members that are perhaps at other buildings. Yeah.
I think that would be very good.
And then if they want to send people from the leadership, or they want to send people from the general membership, we could let them determine that piece. I think if we're having representation across different levels and different positions within the district. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, and then that leaves us with 3 final slots.
And so I can't have both open from our prior and etc. But so we didn't have, so in 2017, we also included youth and family services. We included a team chair.
The team chair could be from the HTA though. So we could either add another
Right. So in
player
2017,
from within there. Yeah.
people who were from HTA, but there were 15 people on the screening committee. So
I mean, I think we definitely want at least one of those to be a community member at
Right.
large.
Well, and
Or-
NESDEC had differentiated parents from different levels and a community member who doesn't currently have a child in the school.
And that's, I think, also an opportunity to reach out to not just the broader community, but specifically potentially to our senior population that is looking at a different angle on, what the town's history is and what they're looking for in the community right now. But not necessarily somebody from the senior community, but somebody that's a group that could also potentially get involved that way.
So a non-parent community member,
Non-parent, yeah.
or well, non-current student parent,
Yes.
non-parent of current student.
All right, so that leaves us then with 2, and do we want to make those parent positions, HTA positions? What are we looking for in that group, or an administrator or somebody from the town?
I think at least one needs to be a parent.
I would agree.
I saw in pardon me. In 2011, there was a category for someone from the HPTO/HEF, which are
Mhm.
different organizations. In the year unknown, it was the HPTO president. So I don't know if it makes sense to, like, those are 2 organizations that give a lot to the schools. If it would make sense to consider making one of those remaining spots for someone from one of those organizations.
So I am trying to think broader here too, because do we also want to include like boosters and other organizations that support the schools? That it, again, kind of like the other support organization, that it be like one of a number of organizations that would be selected by our 2 school committee members who are looking at who's applying for it.
So the since my kids are still so young,
Yeah.
what are the other organizations that do that fundraising?
Yeah, so the boosters do, and Carol, I don't know if you want to jump in, and because I don't want to miss anybody that we would include in that, but the
I'm
Hopkinton
wondering-
Music Association, go ahead.
I am wondering about Georgette, since she'll work extremely close
Oh.
with this person.
And we have actually, I think, always included I don't want to say the former Georgettes, but the people who have occupied that
Yeah.
position.
Oh, not in the year unknown, but
Okay.
2011. Yes. Oh, no, wait. Yes.
Yes, we did. In 2011 and 2017, we did.
2017, yes.
The other thing that I'm thinking about is when we're asking folks to join these groups, I wonder if they should know the dates before they make the commitment, because typically what we do with hiring practices is we say, if you can't attend every single one of the interviews, then you really can't be part of this, because you would be sort of having an unfair influence if you had seen some candidates and not others. So you would really want to be able to commit to all of the dates and times before committing to, being on the interview or the screening committee.
Yes, because once we get into having that 12 schedules to try to coordinate.
So I think once we start to get interest from people, then when we have the dates, we can say either you commit or, we'll look for someone else who fills a similar role.
So if we put one of the spots as the assistant to the superintendent, Georgette's role,
Yep.
then I actually feel like we should have that last spot as a broadly apparent, versus narrowing on only a parent who has volunteered with one of the organizations that raises money.
So we did have, so you mean to have two parents that are just broadly parents, is that?
No, because we have right now we have blanks on spots 11 and 12.
Oh, right, yep.
I think I had the first unknown year up. So apologies, Georgette, if you're here somewhere. And so if spot 11 were
Mhm.
Georgette's spot, then there's one spot left.
So,
And so that would mean that we have a like a community member who does not currently have a student in the schools, but then we don't have a broad
general
category
parent.
of a parent.
Can we
So,
something that Kyla brought up earlier? She mentioned that we have large populations of is the correct term, Southeast Asians and Asians that we might want to consider. I know Jamie's got her list and it's already filling up, but
oh,
I just found myself thinking about that again.
so that they are number 4, the
Okay.
support organization that we had considered, either from, inviting either somebody from LPAC or somebody from SACH.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had
No,
to
that's
bring
okay.
the dog. I had to bring the dog out.
Okay. And the other piece is, I want to make sure that when we're looking at identifying a particular position that only one person occupies, and that person is willing and interested in serving in that position. Carol, I don't know if you've had any conversations or if you want to have a conversation with Georgette to make sure that I don't want to put that on her unless you know specifically that she would be interested.
Yeah, I can have a conversation with her, but I assume that she would be interested, given really how closely she works
Yeah.
with the superintendent.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be the one person who works most closely with the superintendent in the entire district.
And that's why we have included that position specifically. I know at least the last time. And I would assume that the time before. I know we talked at the beginning of this conversation about not having a group that is too large, but do people feel like we would benefit from having a 13th member?
With the intention to be able to include 2 parents?
With
Or-
with the intention of being able to include, yes, to be able to include a parent, as well as if we wanted to invite specifically somebody from the HPTO, HEF, the Hopkinton Music Association, or Boosters, one of those groups that does a lot of fundraising for the schools and does work like that with the schools.
Oh, okay, so like
It would be a parent.
of some level, and then another parent that fits into a specific bucket.
Yes.
Because right now we have 2 parent buckets, but that are specific to groups.
But one parent would be not specific to a group.
Right, and then having one parent that is unaffiliated.
And actually we have a lot of affiliated parents, and I don't know if that's something that we want to rethink, but we have somebody who would be from either LPAC or, and SACH is not necessarily a parent, but it could potentially, but LPAC is definitely all parents. We have a CPAC is going to be a parent. And then if we went with the HPTO/HEF/Hopkinton Music Association, or that's 3 associated groups.
Right.
If we would rather
assigned that yet. Right. Well, that was something that was done previously. And so and I feel like going from 12 to 13 is not, is not, sorry.
That's
My
okay.
computer moving. 12 to 13 doesn't seem like, oh no, now it's not going to work. We can't possibly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't feel like 13 is an inauspicious number. If we were to go from 12 to 13. But like right now, with one blank or maybe two blanks, there's currently only two parents definitely on this committee.
I believe.
Plus potentially two school committee members who are parents.
Well, right. But like right now,
Right.
I mean, and so at least one school committee member that will.
Yeah, so it'll be three, right? It'll be
Right.
three parents at a minimum.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need more than that? Is that the right number?
Well, and I wonder if we want to consider NESDEC's information suggested, like specifically an elementary, a middle school, and a high school parent. And so I don't know if that's something that we would want to consider when we're talking about the last one or two spots for parents on the list, if we go from 12 to 13 or if we stick with 12.
Can we make that decision once we slot in all the parents to the roles that we already have down? And if we need a middle school parent, we can use the 13th spot in that for that person, or
We,
elementary, or
Yeah.
we could leave that to the discretion of the school committee members who are hiring or not hiring, but choosing the committee for the screening to make sure that it's balanced in terms of representation from different age groups. So that, say, if the CPAC member had a child in high school, then making sure that there's maybe an elementary parent somewhere in there, whether it's a school committee member or whether it's somebody who's a support organization or whatever, but leave that 13th one blank at the discretion of the.
great.
Okay. All right. So how do people feel moving on with making a selection on the school committee member? Do you feel like that's something, or the two school committee members, do you think that's something that would benefit from more thought, or people feel ready to make that decision now?
So I just to confirm, so did we decide 13
Yes.
having one from a an organization that is financially involved, and then a kind of floating parent to balance out the age groups of their students?
Yes, but also the other role was the potentially the executive assistant to the superintendent.
Well, oh no, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Georgetta's number 11. And then 12 is an organization, like a parent volunteer from an organization that's involved in fundraising, PTO, HEF, Boosters, Hopkinton Music Association, and any others that we don't have verbally listed right now.
Yeah.
Not leave anyone out.
Yep.
And then if the 13th member is a floating parent, to make sure that we're balancing out parents of different age levels. Is that right?
That is my understanding of what we
Okay.
just discussed.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
So I think that would be a good thing. Although, I mean, the only piece that is different is that we're leaving a little bit flexible, but I think it would be good to have a motion on that.
Okay. So I move to compose a screening committee consisting of the following roles: 2 school committee members, 1 CPAC parent, 1 parent representing the SACH or LPAC community, 1 select board member, 1 school admin rep from central office, 1 school admin rep from a building position, one HTA member in leadership or general, one HTA member on another level, general, other level meaning other education level, building level, one non-parent of a current student from the community, the executive assistant to the superintendent, pending her interests being confirmed, one parent involved in an organization that engages in fundraising activities for the school, including but not limited to the PTO, HEF, Boosters, Hopkinton Music Association, etc. And one parent floating student level, depending on the composition of the rest of the committee.
So motion by Jamie, can I just offer, just as a point of discussion before we go ahead and vote, the piece that I think I've struggled with trying to, wording wise, is do we want to broaden or not broaden, but kind of rename the piece that talks about SACH and LPAC, because I believe there are other organizations that represent cultural diversity within our community that are parent organizations. Do we want to rename that to make sure that that could include other groups as well? So we're not seeming that we're sliding down a slippery slope of excluding other groups, to say like cultural representation or something.
So a position focusing on diversity representation. Parent.
Yes, parent representing diversity representation. My brain is about fried at this point tonight, I'll be honest. But yes, because we have a couple of other large groups that have been, the Hopkinton Chinese American Association and some others. I want to make sure that we've included them.
Right.
Do you
would
accept
this
my friendly amendment? Go ahead, Susan.
Would we be looking at people who are interested, they send in a letter or call and say, we're interested. So then we'd winnow out and see who maybe fits that description of one of the diverse groups.
I think when we put out the applications for the screening committee, I think we specify that we're looking for people who fit certain specific roles. And I think we don't have to name the specific groups, but we could say and see what comes forward from the representing diverse groups.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Is that acceptable for an amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a second on the motion then?
Second,
Second by Chris, and we'll do a roll call vote, starting with you, Chris,
yes.
Kyla,
Yeah.
Susan,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So that we are all set on that then. Do we want to come back next week to the school committee person, or do we want to go ahead with that tonight?
It might make sense to have more discussion tonight so that we're not spending a long time on it next time if we can't make a decision tonight.
Okay.
I don't know if everyone
Nancy,
agrees.
the key dates for the screening committee are to be available and meet and interview are March 11th, 17th, and then the 20th to the 26th.
Hold on, I
Yes.
got to pull it back up, but that sounds about right.
Yes.
Okay.
And they said that it could be nudged a little bit because I asked, since I'll be out of the country, 17th to 21st. And part of my interest in doing this is with children, the youngest of our school committee. My kids will be working, like learning under the new superintendent the longest, which is sort of an enormous impact on my family.
When are I got to pull up on my calendar because I've got 5 different things, the dates for negotiations in March.
There's one on the 14th.
Okay.
And
I thought there was more than one in March.
Well, there's February 28th, there's March 10th, March 14th.
So March 10th. Yep. And I see those now. Okay. The other piece that might be important would be to look at if there are any other scheduling conflicts that other members would have that would need us to nudge things around.
I also will not be available on the 17th.
Okay.
I too am out of the country, but I will be back the
So
18th.
are you, okay, so are you just gone the 17th and 18th, or do you have a longer window?
I am gone the evening of the 13th through the 18th.
Okay, so you would not be available the 13th, the 18th. And then Jamie, can you remind me when you're not available?
17 to 21.
So I would suggest that the two of you not be both on the committee, that it be one or the other, because if it's one of you, that it not be both of you, because that makes us unavailable from the 13th to the 21st to work on the screening committee. And that feels like more than a nudge. I don't know, Chris and Susan, do you guys have anything in those dates? I think, Chris, you may have said that you did not, but
My
No,
calendar is clear.
I'm clear on those dates.
So, I think you would all be really excellent at this, and I don't want to be the person to be choosing between the four of you, but I do want to make sure that the scheduling is going to work, is the primary thing for making sure that we're able to keep things on track. Are there anybody have a strong feeling on kind of as a pair who would be two people good to go together?
Yeah, I think it's hard for any of us to jump in and say. I can absolutely see Susan's value as both an outside eye and someone who's worked within a school system with superintendents directly. I maintain my interest and desire to serve. I don't know.
Well, I suggest this. I want to be on the committee. I'm happy to step aside. I think Kyla and Susan seem to have the most available. If it can only be Kyla or Jamie, and Jamie, you're gone for the longest stretch of that. If Kyla and Susan want to be on that screening committee, that makes sense
It
to
doesn't
me.
have to be one or the other of them, just to be clear. I wasn't saying that one of them had to do it. I was just saying that shouldn't be both of them.
No, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to make a motion on that?
Well, I don't know which of Kyla.
Sorry.
I mean, does that make sense? I mean, again, this is more a discussion point.
Yeah.
If we're talking about dates and availability and not pushing stuff, does that make the most sense? I mean, no one seems to want to back down. I'm happy to back down just to
I know,
get
but you
two
back
people
down
here.
before too. I don't want to,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that seems to make the most sense. I think you make a good point, Nancy, not to have both Kyla and Jamie on it based on just availability. And Susan brings a lot to the table and she has a wide open calendar. So that seems to make the most sense to me.
Okay. Kyla or
So if
Susan?
Jamie and Kyla, you guys want to fight it out, you guys can fight it out. I'd like to just
Yep.
pick
I'm-
two and let's get moving.
Let's get it
I'm-
done.
Yeah, let's get moving.
right. So would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to nominate Kyla and Susan to represent the school committee on the screening committee.
So a motion by Chris. Is there a second on that?
Second,
Second by Susan. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with you, Susan,
yes.
Kyla,
Yeah.
Chris,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So we will have Kyla and Susan represent us. And then I will forward Kyla the dates, the 13th to the 18th that you said you're not available, and ask that Judy forward us back another, I don't think she has to come to our next meeting. I think she can forward us just.
I will be
revised schedule.
back the evening of the 18th,
Okay,
and I'm available till about 2 p.m. on the 13th.
okay.
I have a late flight and then an early flight on the 18th.
Where is
Well, I
it
hope
that
you're
you're
going
going?
someplace fun.
I'm going to Rome.
Fabulous. All right. So I don't think we need to bring NESDEC back to our next meeting. I think we can just ask for a revised timeline to accommodate that, and then we can just either pass it or at our next meeting, and that will allow also, Carol, if you want to look at on Tuesday at your central admin or your administrative team, that would be helpful.
Sure.
And then Chris and I will do the selection
Yes.
of,
That's, yes. Can we do we want to do a motion on that to make that official as well?
yes. Oh, we
And
don't
is
have,
that okay, Chris? Are you able to do that as well? You guys can fit the schedule around.
I've been dropped off this call a bunch. I lost the last about 30 seconds.
Okay. Are you willing to do the piece of selecting the community and parents?
Oh, yeah.
Members of the screening committee with
Yeah.
Jamie? Okay.
Yeah, no
So-
problem.
Then would somebody like to make a motion to appoint Chris and Jamie as the committee to choose the screening committee?
I'll
I
make a
move-
motion to, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Kyla.
I'll make a motion to approve Jamie and Chris to approve the screening committee for community members and teachers.
That's a motion by Kyla. Is there a second on that?
Second,
Second by Susan. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with you, Susan,
yes.
Kyla,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Jamie,
yes.
and I am also a yes. And then I think we are at a point where we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Fabulous. Motion by Susan, second by Chris. We'll start with you, Susan,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kyla,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I am also a yes, and we are adjourned at 9:16. I will see everybody next Thursday for our joint discussion with the Select Board and Appropriations Committee. And
Good
other
night.
business. Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year.